Let's take a look at some market news now. Asian markets rose on Tuesday morning after a slow start to the day as investors brushed off a weak lead from Wall Street while looking ahead for release of the Chinese growth data. With few catalysts to drive business, regional equities at first struggled for traction but picked up as the day wore on, resuming an uptrend that has characterized the year. Focus turns now to China's growth figures, which come after a number of upbeat readings on the world's number 2 economy, including factory activity, inflation, new loans and trade, that have given some cause for optimism. A good day for the Asian markets, with the Nikkei moving 0.2% higher at the close, while the Hang Seng was over 1% higher. Big gains for the Shanghai Composite as it moved up 2.4%. Wall Street ended slightly lower on Monday, dragged down by financials as underwhelming earnings from Goldman Sachs and Citigroup curbed investor enthusiasm. The Dow Jones Industrial Average dipped 0.1% to 26,382 points, while the S&P 500 barely lost 2 points to close out at 2,905 points, and the Nasdaq Composite was 0.1% lower at 7,976 points. Let's cross to the Johannesburg Stock Exchange now. Our markets anchor, Arabile Gumede, is standing by. Arabile, the market seems to be following the colour of your tie.
Indeed they are, Nzinga. Thank you so much. Good afternoon to you. Yeah, it is green across South Africa's JSE board today. But before we go to that very quickly, Nzinga, just wanted to note how even the company Total has decided to line itself up to give around 100 million euros to the rebuilding of the cathedral in Paris, Notre Dame. It is quite interesting. There are a number of billionaires as well have continued to offer not just words of commiseration, but certainly money as well to rebuilding what is clearly an iconic element to Paris as well. So it's quite interesting on that note. We want to tally that up and actually see just how much will be put forward, and hopefully we can get that number for you very soon. But yeah, with regards to the markets, things are looking pretty good on the local front. This stems really from the Asian market, which this morning was able to gather up some steam. It does seem that things with regards to earnings season out in the United States doesn't necessarily look as great as one would have hoped. The two banks to have come out yesterday, the likes of Citibank, not doing as well as one would have hoped. And those are usually used as a gauge of how the corporate America situation sort of looks like. And that doesn't look as good as one would certainly have liked thus far. So flattering to deceive, but things like the oil price perhaps halting where it is at present, but still firmly above $70 a barrel. All of those things still happening, including South Africa's rand, still firmly above 14 rand against the US dollar. Let's unpack exactly what the numbers look like, and we'll get into an analysis in just a moment. Let's get into that market picture now. Sean Morrison from IG joins us in studio to unpack that live here at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Sean, thank you so much for the time. 0.8% to the good, so a good sense to the market thus far this afternoon. Any sentiment exactly as to what exactly is pushing this market a little bit higher today?
Well, I think that's a gauge of positive sentiment, improved risk appetite in the market at the moment, because there isn't really that much news to catalyse it. You know, I think markets are getting optimistic that US-China is going to be nearing a trade deal that might provide some positive impetus to markets. We do have that Chinese GDP coming out on Wednesday. The markets have usually been a little bit apprehensive, so it's surprising to see it rallying as much, but probably because that supporting data, the economic data leading into that, has been better from China, so maybe the slowdowns not as drastic as people may be worried about.
Yeah, and very quickly as well, even the currency, I mean, it had gone as much as 14 rand against the US dollar at some point this morning, but, still hovering above that 14 rand mark. There seems to be a lot more dollar strength than it is South African weakness per se.
Yeah, I think there's general emerging market currency weakness at the moment. The rand has done great over the last couple of weeks. I think since we had that, Moody's deciding not to downgrade us, I think a lot of there was a lot priced in towards a downgrade, or at least a downgrade to the outlook. And in turn, we've seen the rand had a good run. It's slightly weaker today. I think probably 14 is quite a psychological level to the market. We do prefer to see it below, but I think it's still fairly valued around this level.
Things don't necessarily change if it's 1401 or 1398, right? It's still technically there and thereabouts, right? Very quickly as well, that oil price. So Russia, OPEC, you know, they seem to be headed for a continued fight of market share there, and that certainly might help us in any way, seeing the petrol price is going to climb by around 50 cents odd.
I'm actually quite surprised that the oil price is actually remained resilient. You know, obviously OPEC Plus, which is, you know, the OPEC nations with Russia. The comments from Russia has been that they're going to reduce production, or that they're looking to reduce production. There's a meeting between, you know, all the major producers in June. But they seem to definitely want to capture market share, and there's been talk of a $40 per barrel Brent price, which is, you know, that would be lovely, wouldn't it?
That would certainly be absolutely amazing news. The rand can stay where it is. That oil price jolts down to $40 a barrel. That should do well then for our petrol price, right? And then we'll hope that consumers will be able to spend elsewhere, which in turn could boost South Africa's
as long
economy
as we don't push the levies too much.
Well, exactly. That becomes a problem. But on the equity front, likes of MTN, just thought we'd look at that as well. 2.5% higher thus far. But they are making note that they may still sell their stake in their Nigerian e-commerce business, Jumia Technologies. How important and how significant is it that they're selling a stake in a Nigerian company, which has been the place where they've had all their troubles?
I think if you look at Jumia, it's not a core asset of theirs. It's an investment in it. It is actually a loss-making asset. You know, it's not profitable. It's had a very good listing, and I think the 27 valuation on the company was about $1.8 billion. And at current valuations, look at 1.94 billion. So it's quite a good price for that. Could be, earnings accretive for MTN. So I get what you're saying in terms of relationships with the Nigerian, but regulators and that. But from a business sense, it does seem to make sense to me.
Even though they've also, they've just listed, they got their IPO on the New York Stock Exchange. Now the valuation of the company is around 26.6 billion South African rands. That is in SA terms. One would have thought that perhaps they'd still want to keep it in some sense, and it's only a 30% stake. So do away with it completely or just decrease even more.
Well, they haven't committed. They say they're in the proceeds of assessing the sale. Like I said, I think it's a good price. It's a online classified business. It's not really part of the core business model of MTN. I think getting a nice cash injection can help them
perhaps
sort of
to
downplay some of the debt, pay some of the Nigerian regulator fines, things like that. So I'm in favour of the idea of selling.
And then EOH as well, a set of earnings from that front, a sale of assets as well. A lot just happening with that tech company. Yeah,
down 16% when the trading statement came out. Up 30%. I saw 32% at some stage today. It's very, very volatile. I think markets obviously adjusted to what's been happening, the corporate governance issues, and there is some positive sentiment relating to maybe there is a turnaround in the business under Stephen Van Coller. If the sale of the assets, again, they are projecting lower future earnings. The sale of assets can pay down some of the liabilities, which I think is 7.5 billion. That being said, a move for 32% in a day, I would argue that a lot of that might be short covering, those betting against it, closing out their positions. And obviously a lot of day traders in the market like to capitalize on a move, and they can exaggerate those moves in the market. So 32% is quite substantial.
Perhaps a little bit more of that will come back, as you say. Sean, appreciate the time though. A whole lot certainly has just happened, of course, and we'll continue to watch out for the Chinese GDP data as well, which will be quite interesting to look out for. But indeed, as you can tell, the market's still on a relative high. Seeing even the likes of Naspers go up around 1.5% or so today. So some positivity certainly lingering within the market. We'll continue to unpack exactly how things fare as well throughout the day. But for now, that's where the buck stops. It's back to Nzinga right after this short break.